Um, my wife made me promise that I would not just preach. It's not that she has anything against preaching, but she says what a pet peeve of hers is when missionaries come, they don't talk about what they're doing, they just preach. So she will probably ask you, she will check up. And so please tell her that I am sharing with you about what we are doing in Guam. Let me first of all tell you that I'm dressed up here today. I have never met the governor that I know of. I know the former lieutenant governor, maybe he was the former governor at one time, Felix Camacho. I've talked to him a number of times. And if Felix were to give me a call and he were to say, listen, we're going to meet down at the Fiesta restaurant, which ever go to Guam, eat there. They got this incredible buffet down on the tourist strip. And he said, we're going to meet for a meal down at the Fiesta, and the governor's going to be there, and members of the legislature, and the president of SFM, and the ambassador from Palau, and somebody important from the Philippines, you know, probably a relative of Doreen and the family there. I would probably wear this, okay? I mean, this is a dress-up outfit. I've worn a necktie one time since January. That was at the baccalaureate and graduation this past spring at PIU. And actually one of our staff members made fun of me when I wore it on that occasion. I have not worn a jacket this year until I arrived in the 48 here the other day. I about froze to death in Atlanta. It was very, very cold. Several of you have asked about Kathy. She is in Guam. Experience that Doug and Dorcas had, and some of the rest of you have had in the past. When I was packing up for this trip, I had this weird, okay, am I going home or am I leaving home? You know, there was just this real oddity, and I thought about you a number of times because I have stuff there and I have stuff here, and you know, trying to sort, oh, that's over there, you know, that kind of thing. And I remember you talking about that many times, Doug. But Kathy is there in Guam. It is add 15 hours to this, so what's that? It's 2:30 in the morning, so I hope she's sleeping well. And she was at church this morning. She was playing the keyboard at church this morning. I talked to her last evening after she had finished church. I know that sounds weird, but she's doing well. She's involved in teaching Bible study, kind of like Coffee Break. In fact, I think she's doing one of the series that you ladies did in Coffee Break here. She's doing one of the series, maybe God's Right After All. Does that sound familiar? She's doing that series with ladies on Thursday morning at our church in Guam. It's a mouthful, our church in Guam. Faith Presbyterian Christian Reformed Church. Okay. But it's a lovely place. We're glad to be there. I'll be preaching there the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Not sure where my pastor there will be. Some of you ask about my trip. I landed in Houston. Well, let me start with the takeoff. I took off on Wednesday morning, October the 18th. Took off Wednesday morning, October the 18th from Guam. Landed in Hawaii on October the 17th. So you get your globe out and figure that one out, okay? And then I landed in Houston about the same time I left Guam. I took a shuttle bus to College Station, where Chris and Nancy are. I was with them for about a day and a half, rode the shuttle bus back to the airport at Houston, flew from there to Raleigh-Durham. There were a couple reasons why I landed there instead of Roanoke. Flew to Raleigh-Durham, rented a car, and drove to Roanoke. Darren Brown was kind enough to park my car in the parking lot at the Roanoke airport because I'd turned a rental car in there. Drove home, spoke at Faith Baptist Church on the 22nd. Luann and Brian came over to one of the services so they could hear Kathy and Luann's piano student play the offertory, so I got to see them that Sunday. Left that afternoon, went back to Raleigh-Durham, met with a guy 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning, consultant kind of guy. Drove from there to Columbia, South Carolina. I was there a couple days doing some recruiting, etc. School Pastor Doug graduated from Columbia International University, where he got his master's. I went from there to Orlando. I was there 3 days. That was the real purpose for the trip. our accrediting agency, which if you imagine a room full of IRS agents, that's basically what an accrediting agency is. I was with the accrediting agency meeting, convention there for 3 days, drove from there over to Sarasota, saw my niece and her family. They're part of our support team. They're in ministry. Rob's one of the pastors at a church there. Went over to Tampa, met with a potential teacher, spent the night with him, drove from there, it's about 450 miles, something like that, up to Atlanta, drove up to Atlanta, met with our board member of the pastoral staff at the church where he goes, promoting the school. Drove from there down to Monroe, Louisiana, where Chad and his family are. It's almost 500 miles down there. Able to celebrate 5th birthday with Ava, which was cool. Went trick-or-treating with Ava, and then flew to Newark. Rented a car in Newark, was one night, day and part of a day at Liebenzell, mission we serve with, met with some folk from Germany, several other people there, and then drove down here yesterday. I leave on Tuesday morning. I get back to Guam time Thursday morning, 6:35, and I'm scheduled to teach a class at 8 o'clock. So please pray for me. Just to update you on what is going on at Pacific Islands University. My reason for being there is tied in with the ailment that Dave Owen is dealing with. He continues to be under the treatment of Stanford University. He is maybe about a third of the way through this bone marrow transplant program that he's on. Some of you old timers remember Jason McLean. He received bone marrow transplant back when it was quite new. They've refined things a good bit since then. They were able to harvest the cells that they need. Dave's is an auto transplant. They basically knock him down into remission, draw the cells out. They will reintroduce them later. They were able to harvest the cells. They will start hitting him very hard with chemotherapy, and will do everything they can to kill all the bad guys. In the process, they'll kill some good guys. They'll be very vulnerable to infection during that time. Then they will reintroduce these cells that have been harvested. If everything goes well, they will go through the bloodstream, set up housekeeping in his bone marrow, and everything will be well. So please pray. Because this is a longer-term situation than we originally thought, and because we need to communicate more stability to those that we're working with, about a month ago, the Board of Trustees at Pacific Islands University took the interim off of my title. Interim is a temporary thing, and in a sense, we're all in an interim situation, are we not? And so it doesn't really change anything. I didn't get instantly smarter when they did this, but my title is the president of Pacific Islands University right now. I've shared with you in the past that we have 3 great needs in going forth. We need more students, so please pray about that. We have some key staff positions to fill, one of which is to find a permanent person to be in this role that I'm in. And the other is finances, and I'm seeking to put together a broader base of finance. I'm a very sorry missionary. I'm sure that Jacob and Crystal brought a whole bunch of stuff that they will show you about Korea. I brought almost nothing. I had no slides to show you, etc. I did bring just a couple of things. I have a little sheet that tells you about the fundraising project that we're doing, Coffee with the President. Who would imagine why I would have coffee? Well, those that are part of our support team, we're giving them this coffee cup, which works for hot chocolate or tea as well, by the way. So that I felt fell down and hurt my shoulder. It's probably is in his third year at our school, maybe. And then it takes 48 hours on a boat to get out. Is a graduate of MIBS, Micronesian Institute, a master. Program at Liberty. She wants to be a counselor. Leanne, radio. And Johnny, the student dean. Alex, who's a fellow Liebenzell missionary. Because it's better to assure failure. Well, where's Bob? I haven't seen him. I don't know. You seen him? Because what Jody did was he went around and talked to his teacher. What makes him a man, he grew like that. Undergraduate. From PIU. All of his family, his dad. in every realm of life. It's based on 1 Samuel. Gauge these Philistines, perhaps. Will Jody be that person that will not? Okay? And so, university. Itself. As I say, I have a couple of these. Much Stephanie. For inserting a outline in the bulletin, I would clearly I want to have Lester Pipkin's job. Lester Pipkin. Remarkable. And Dan was talking, I understand, Edinburgh. Germany, showed up and he nailed 95 statements to the church door. And he wanted the scholars to get together and Though I lived as a monk without reproach. That's the original. Sin are crushed by every kind of calamity. Nevertheless, I beat the righteous. Righteousness of God is revealed. Righteousness with which a merciful God who had come to the same realization and had written about it with their lives. But it is by God. God's grace will go on. Now, when I say he began a movement, I'm not only talking about the Lutheran Church, gospel preaching. Preaching church, I'm glad to share with them in spite of our differences. We're not Lutherans. Bruce. Because this statement that captured Martin Luther, which was first stated, by the way, in the book of Habakkuk, is in Romans chapter 1 and verse 17 in the introduction to this great and powerful book. And I printed the verses out for you there in your outline sheet so that you can underline some things and take note of them. And as I read earlier in Romans 1:17, we see this. For in it, that is the gospel that he mentioned in verse 16. In the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. For it is written, but the righteous man shall live by faith. Romans is very, very much about righteousness. In Romans 1 through 3, there is this devastating reality Why? Because if you show up at one of these places and you don't have your passport, if you show up at the TSA line and you don't have your boarding pass, if you get 5,000 miles away, I think I left my wallet at the X-ray machine. It's terrible to not have what you need at the point that you need it. Now, everybody, don't take this the wrong way. I mean, as Doug indicated, I pastored this church for 42 years, and, you know, I mean, you mow your grass, and you pay your taxes, and you're kind to your neighbors, and you give the preacher, no, not one. All of us have sinned. Substitutes. Accept not substitutes. Make sure you get the real one. Don't get the knockoff. Get the real one. Well, sometimes that has some merit. Sometimes you find out that the knockoff was made on the same. Paul said, in Philippians chapter 3, chapter 3 and verse 11, and this, now that no one is justified if you've done done any reading of I mean, the man would sleep. I haven't done enough. I haven't done enough. I haven't done enough. For by grace are you saved through prayer. Am I to exercise? On the air control. That's pretty with you these two verses together. But my righteous one shall live by books in the New. Testament to get a handle on. Talking to people. People that are considering But we do know absolutely for sure that the book of Hebrews was through the angels that the law was given. In chapter 3, and better tabernacle by means of a better sacrifice through faith being superior to anything. Low spot. On a bed. You ever sleep in a bed with a saggy mattress? And the book of Hebrews is saying, see, you say, I didn't do this, and I didn't do this, and I didn't do this, and therefore I'm... I do this, then I do this, then I do this. In a theology class on soteriology. It says in Romans 5:1, by faith we have peace. Alone. We read that the righteous and we live according to it, will bring, and that others banded with him to make that. I'm going to be at the back so I can greet you and one. Of our elders here. And Lord, I pray that we would be such people. That, all-night teen event.